Chapter 21. The nurse in the first aid room at the Fluxion bandaged the slash on Quilleran's hand. "I'm afraid you'll live," she said cheerfully. "It's only a scratch." "It bled a lot," he said. "That spike was razor sharp and a foot long. It was actually a jade harpoon, used for spearing walrus in the Arctic." "How appropriate, under the circumstances," said the nurse, with an affectionate side glance at Quilleran's mustache. "Lucky I didn't get it in the stomach." "The wound looks clean," said the nurse, "but if it gives you any trouble, see a doctor." "You can skip the commercial," Quilleran said. "I know it by heart." She patted the final strip of adhesive tape and admired her handiwork. The nurse had made a good show of the bandage. It did nothing for Quilleran's typing efficiency, but it enhanced his story when he faced his audience at the press club that evening. An unusually large number of Fluxion staffers developed a thirst at 5:30, and the crowd formed around Quilleran at the bar. His published account had appeared in the afternoon edition, but his fellow staffers knew that the best details of any story never get into print. Quilleran said, with barely suppressed pride, "It was Coco who alerted me to the hoax. He licked one of Bunsen's photos and drew attention to the secret compartment." "I used side lighting," Bunsen explained. "I put a light to the left of the camera at a 90-degree angle, and it showed up the tiny crack. The camera caught it, but the eye would never know it was there." "When I discovered the swing-out compartment packed full of jade," said Quilleran, "I was so fascinated that I didn't hear Tate coming. First thing I knew, a cat shrieked, and there was that guy coming at me with an Eskimo harpoon, a spike this long." He measured an exaggerated 12 inches with his hands. "Coco was snarling. The other cat was flying around screaming, and there was that maniac coming at me with a spike. Everything went out of focus. Then, crash! Tate fell flat on his face." Quilleran displayed his bandaged hand. "He must have hurled the spike as he fell." Arch Riker said, "Tell them how your cat tripped him up." Quilleran took time to light his pipe, while his audience waited for the inside story. "Coco was on a long leash, and he flew around in circles so fast, all I could see was a smoke ring in midair, and when Tate crashed to the floor, his legs were neatly trussed up in 12 feet of cord." "Crazy," said the photographer. "Wish I'd been there with a movie camera." "I picked up the jade spike and kept Tate down on the floor while I called the police on that gold-plated French phone." "When you go first class," Bunsen said. Then Lodge Kendall arrived from headquarters. "Quill was right all along," he told everyone. "The houseboy was innocent. Tate has told the police that he staked Paolo to a one-way fare to Mexico, then transferred the jade to the wardrobe cabinet and threw one piece behind Paolo's bed. And you remember the missing luggage? He'd given it to the boy himself." "Was it the insurance money he was after?" "Chiefly. Tate wasn't an astute businessman. He lost the family fortune, and he needed a large sum of cash to invest in another harebrained scheme. But there was something else, too. He hates the Fluxion, ever since they played up his role in a paternity case." "I'd like to know why he didn't settle that claim out of court," Quilleran said. "He tried, but he was up against dirty politics, he claims. It seems there was another Tate, a cousin of George Verning, who was running for Congress that year, and the paternity claim was timed accordingly. Somebody figured the voters wouldn't know one Tate from another, and apparently it was true. The guy lost the election." Quilleran said, "Did Tate tell the police anything about his proposed trip to Denmark?" "Nobody mentioned it at headquarters." "Well," said Riker, "I'll tune in tomorrow for the next installment. I'm going home to dinner." "I'm going home to feed Coco a filet mignon," said Quilleran. "After all, he saved my neck." "Don't kid yourself," Bunsen said. "He was chasing that female cat." "I dropped her off at the pet hospital," Quillerin said. "She had an infected wound in her side. That guy probably gave her a kick when he threw her out." Quillerin had floated high on excitement all afternoon, but when he arrived home, he succumbed to exhaustion. Coco reacted the same way. The cat lay on his side, legs stiffly extended, one ear bent under his head. To all appearances, a dead cat, except for a thoughtful look in half-open eyes. He ignored his dinner. Quillerin went to bed early, and his dreams were pertinent and convincing. He dreamed that Percy was saying, "Quill, you and Coco have done such a good job on the Tate case. We want you to find David Lyke's murderer." And Quillerin said, "The investigation may take us to Japan, Chief." And Percy said, "Go right ahead. You can have an unlimited expense account." Quillerin's mustache twitched in his sleep. So did the cat's whiskers. Coco was dreaming too. Early Saturday morning, while Quillerin was snoring gently and his subconscious was wrestling with the Lyke mystery, the telephone began ringing insistently. When it succeeded in shaking him awake, he reached groggily toward the bedside table, found the receiver, and heard the operator say, "This is Aarhus, Denmark. I have a call from Mr. James Quillerin." "Speaking," Quillerin croaked in his early morning voice. "Quill, this is Harry," came a transatlantic shout. "We just heard the news." "You did? In Denmark?" "It came over the radio." "It's a big shame. He was a nice guy." "I don't know about him," said Norton. "I only knew her. He must have cracked up." "Who cracked up?" "What's the matter? Aren't you awake yet?" "I'm awake," said Quillerin. "What are you talking about?" "Is this Quill? This is Quillerin, isn't it?" "I think so. I'm a little groggy. Are you talking about the murder?" "Murder?" shouted Norton. "What murder?" Quillerin paused. "Aren't you talking about David Lyke?" "I'm talking about G. Vernon Tate. What's happened to David?" "He's dead. He was shot last Monday night." "David dead? My gosh, who did it?" "They don't know. It happened in his apartment, in the middle of the evening." "Somebody break in?" "It doesn't appear so." "Why would anyone want to kill David? He was a fantastic guy." "What was it you heard on the radio over there?" Quillerin asked. "About Tate's arrest. Mrs. Tate's family couldn't believe it when they heard the news." Quillerin sat up straight. "You know her family?" "Just met them. Fine people. Her brother's working with me on the hush-hush deal I told you about. Don't forget, I promised you the Fluxion will get the scoop." "What's the nature of it?" "I'm financing a fantastic manufacturing process. Quill, I'm going to be the richest man in the world." "Is it a new invention?" "A scientific discovery," Norton said. "While the rest of the world is fooling around with outer space, the Danes are doing something for mankind here and now." "Sounds great. Until I got over here, I didn't know what it was all about. I just took her word that it was something world-shaking." "Whose word?" "Mrs. Tate's." "She tipped you off to her brother's discovery?" "Well, you see, Dr. Torvaldsen needed financing, and she knew her husband couldn't swing it. She'd heard about me and thought I could handle it. Of course, she wanted a kickback, under the table, so to speak." Norton paused. "This is all off the record, of course." Quillerin said, "Tate was heading for Denmark. He probably expected to invest the insurance money." There was some interference on the line. "Are you still there?" Quillerin said. Norton's voice had faded. "Listen, I'll call you tomorrow. Can you hear me?" As soon as everything's sewed up legally, this is a lousy connection. Hope they nab David's killer. So long. Call you within 24 hours. It was Saturday, but Quillerin went into the office to work ahead on the next issue of Gracious Abodes. He was determined now that Fran Unger should not get the magazine away from him. He hoped also to see Percy and say, "I told you so." But the managing editor was attending a publishers' conference in New York. During the day, Quillerin made 2 important phone calls, one to the hospital to inquire about the cat, and one to the MIDI studio to make a dinner date with Cokie. When he went home in the late afternoon to feed Coco, he found a scene of frantic activity. Coco was careening drunkenly around the apartment. He was playing with his homemade mouse, a game related to hockey, basketball, and tennis, with elements of wrestling. The cat skidded the small gray thing over the polished floor, pounced on it, tossed it in the air, batted it across the room, pursued it, made a flying tackle, clutched it in his forepaws, and rolled back and forth in ecstasy until the mouse slipped from his grasp and the chase began again. With an audience, Coco was inclined to vaunt his prowess. As Quillerin watched, the cat dribbled the mouse the length of the living room, gave it a well-aimed whack, and scored a goal directly under the old Spanish chest. Then he trotted after it, peered under the low chest, and raised his head in a long, demanding howl. "No problem," said Quillerin. "This time I'm equipped." From the hall closet, he brought the umbrella that Mrs. Hawkins had so conveniently forgotten. The first sweep under the chest produced nothing but dust, and Coco increased the volume of his demands. Quillerin got down on the floor and poked the finial into far, dark corners, fishing out the jade button that had disappeared a few days before. Coco's clamor was loud and unceasing. The next sweep of the umbrella brought forth something pink. Not exactly pink, Quillerin told himself, but almost pink. And it looked vaguely familiar. He had an idea what it was, and he knew very well how it had managed to get there. "Coco," he said sternly, "what do you know about this?" Before the cat could answer with a guttural sound and a wrestling match with an invisible enemy, Quillerin went to the telephone and rapidly dialed a number. "Cokie," he said, "I'm going to be late picking you up. Why don't you take a cab to the press club and meet me there?" "No, just a little business emergency I've got to handle." "All right, see you shortly. And I may have some news for you." Quillerin turned back to the cat. "Coco, when did you eat this pink stuff? Where did you find it?" When Quillerin arrived at the press club, Cokie was waiting in the lobby, sitting in one of the worn leather sofas. "There's trouble," she said. "I can read it in your face." "Wait till we get a table, and I'll explain," he said. "Let's sit in the cocktail lounge. I'm expecting a phone call." They went to a table with a red checked tablecloth, well patched and darned. "There's been an unexpected development in connection with David's murder," Quillerin began, "and Coco's involved. He was in David's apartment when the fatal shot was fired, and he apparently ate some wool. When I brought him home that night, he looked odd. I thought he'd had a fright. Now, I'm inclined to think it was a stomachache. I suppose cats get stomachaches." "He couldn't digest the wool?" Cokie said. "He might have managed the wool, but there was something else in the cloth. After he came home, he must have upchucked the whole thing and hidden it under the Spanish chest. I found it an hour ago. Koki clapped her hands to her face. And you recognized it? Don't tell me you actually recognized it. Yes. And I think it would have looked familiar to you, too. It was a yellowish pink wool with gold metallic threads. Natalie Neuton, that hand-woven dress she wore to the party. Quillerin nodded. It appears that Natalie was in Dave's apartment Monday night, and she may have been there when he was shot. At any rate, it was something that had to be reported to the police, so I took the peach-colored wool over to headquarters. That's why I was late. What did they say? When I left, they were hustling out to Lost Lake Hills. Our police reporter promised to call me here if anything develops. I wonder why Natalie didn't come forward and volunteer some information to the police. That's what worries me, said Quillerin. If she had information to give, and the killer knew it, he might try to silence her. The domed ceiling of the club multiplied the voices of the Saturday night crowd into a roar, but above it came an amplified announcement on the public address system. Telephone for Mr. Quillerin. That's our night man at police headquarters. I'll be right back. He hurried to the phone booth. When he returned, his eyes had acquired a darkness. What's wrong, Quill? Is it something terrible? The police were too late. Too late? Too late to find Natalie alive. Murdered? No. She took her own life, said Quillerin. Evidently a heavy dose of alcohol, and then sleeping pills. A sad wail came from Koki. But why? Why? Apparently, it was explained in her diary. She was hopelessly in love with her decorator, and he wasn't one to discourage an affair. That I know. Natalie thought Dave was ready to marry her the moment she got a divorce, and she wanted him so desperately that she agreed to her husband's terms. No financial settlement, and no request for child custody. Then last weekend, it dawned on her that Dave would never marry her, or anyone else. When Odd Bunsen and I turned up at her house Monday morning, and she refused to see us, she must have been out of her mind with disappointment and remorse, and a kind of hopeless panic. I'd be blind with fury, said Koki. She was blind enough to think she could set things right by killing David. Then it was Natalie? It was Natalie. Afterward, she went home, dismissed the maid, and lived through 24 hours of hell before ending it. She's been dead since Tuesday night. There was a long silence at the table. After a while, Quillerin said, the police found the peach-colored dress in her closet. The shawl had quite a lot of fringe missing. Then the menus came, and Koki said, I'm not hungry. Let's go for a walk and talk about other things. They walked, and talked about Coco and the new cat, whose name was Yu or Freya. I hope they'll be happy together, said Koki. I think we're all going to be happy together, said Quillerin. I'm going to change her name to Yum Yum. I've got to change your name, too. The girl looked at him dreamily. You see, said Quillerin, Coco doesn't like it when I call you Koki. It's too close to his own name. Just call me Al, said Alicoque Wright, with a wistful droop in her voice and a resigned lift to her eyebrows. It was Monday when the news of Harry Neuton's Danish enterprise appeared on the front page of the Daily Fluxion under Quillerin's byline. In the first edition, a typographical error had substituted devious for diverse, but it was a mistake so customary that the item would have been disappointing without it. Harry Neuton, financier and promoter of devious business interests, said the bulletin. has acquired the worldwide franchise for a Danish scientist's unique contribution to human welfare. Calorie-free beer with vitamin C added. On the same day, in a small ceremony at the press club, Quillerin was presented with an honorary press card for his cat. On it was pasted Coco's identification photo with eyes wide, ears alert, whiskers bristling. "I took his picture," said Odd Bunsen, "that night in David Lake's apartment." And Lodge Kendall said, "Don't think I had an easy time getting the police chief and fire commissioner to sign it." When Quillerin returned to the villa veranda that evening, he entered the apartment with his fingers crossed. He had brought Yum Yum home from the hospital at noon, and the two cats had had several hours in which to sniff each other, circle warily, and make their peace. All was silent in the living room. On the green Danish chair sat Yum Yum, looking dainty and sweet. Her face was a poignant triangle of brown, and her eyes were enormous circles of violet blue, slightly crossed. Her brown ears were cocked at a flirtatious angle, and where the silky hairs of her pelt grew in conflicting directions on her white breast, there was a cowlick of fur, softer than down. Coco sat on the coffee table, tall and masterful, with a ruff of fur bushed around his neck. "You devil," said Quillerin. "There's nothing neurotic about you, and there never was. You knew what you were doing all the time." With a grunt, Coco jumped down from the table and ambled over to join Yum Yum. They sat side by side in identical positions, like bookends, with both tails curled to the right, both pairs of ears worn like coronets, both pairs of eyes ignoring Quillerin with pointed unconcern. Then Coco gave Yum Yum's face 2 affectionate licks and lowered his head, arching his neck gracefully. He narrowed his eyes, and they became slits of catly ecstasy as the little female recognized her cue and washed inside his ears with her long, pink tongue. And that is the end of The Cat Who Ate Danish Modern.